Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and today we are on Book 6 of the Oz series, The Emerald City of Oz. This is the book in which Frank Baum attempted, as we used to say many moons ago on the internet, to say rocks fall, everyone dies. That is, he decided to basically try to make it stop, to leave Oz behind. He has after all done 6 books now, and he wants to do something else with his time, so he decides enough is enough. And so he writes this author's note in which he says, "I have used many suggestions conveyed to me in letters from children. Once on a time I really imagined myself an author of fairy tales, but now I am merely an editor or private secretary for a host of youngsters whose ideas I am requested to weave into the thread of my stories." And so he has had happen to him something that we accuse the modern age of being the cause of, that is, showrunners and other people basically letting themselves be dragooned by their fans into doing what the fans want. But in this case, Frank Baum, was being bullied by children in the year 1909, and by 1910 he had written a 6th Oz book. And so he writes this story, which, like the others, is in many ways feels extremely plotless. It has more of a plot than some, I grant, but at the same time, this book so very interestingly, as I said, it's a rocks fall, everyone dies. The last chapter is how the story of Oz came to an end, in which he writes, "The writer of these Oz stories has received a little note from Princess Dorothy of Oz, which for a time has made him feel rather disconcerted. The note was written on a broad white feather from a stork's wing, and it said, 'You will never hear anything more about Oz, because we are now cut off forever from all the rest of the world. But Toto and I will always love you and all the other children who love us, Dorothy Gale.'" This seemed to me too bad at first, for Oz is a very interesting fairyland. Still, we have no right to feel grieved, for we have had enough of the history of the land of Oz to fill 6 storybooks. And from its quaint people and their strange adventures, we have been able to learn so many useful and amusing things. In effect, he declares that he's not writing any more of these. He is done with Oz. It's over. He's not going to do any more. And yet somehow we are aware, as we read this 6th book, that there is in fact a 7th and an 8th book. There are further books in this series, a series that continued indeed to be written after his death. I tried some of those. They weren't as good. The point is that though this was supposed to be the end, and in a lot of ways it reads like the end, this story begins with Dorothy's aunt and uncle basically losing their farm. They worked very hard, but as happened to many people at many points in time, they just couldn't pay back the mortgage on the farm to pay back the bank, and they were about to be forced to leave their farm, that the bank was going to reclaim it, because that's what happens when you can't pay your mortgage. And Dorothy, who had basically only come back to Kansas because her aunt and uncle were there, she loves Oz, but her family is in the outside world, so that's where she is. But she informs them that, she can get out and avoid doing things, and so she makes the secret symbol arranged between her and Ozma at 4 o'clock, as Ozma looks in on her in her magic mirror at 4 o'clock every day, and gets teleported away to Oz. At which point she asks Ozma, "Could you allow my aunt and uncle to move here to Oz?" And Ozma agrees. And so Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, who are both plain, ordinary, lower middle class farm folks, suddenly appear in the grand throne room of Oz and have no idea how to handle anything that goes on. Indeed, there are a lot of collisions between how things work in the outside world and how things work in Oz when Aunt Em gets into an argument with Billina about the proper way to treat chickens, because Aunt Em is thinking of what you do with chickens, which is you raise roasters. That is, you raise chickens who you are planning to eat, and those are the ones you make really, really fat. And, of course, Billina, who is a talking hen and is now living in Oz, does not approve of this idea, and the pair of them do wind up having a great many collisions with how they think of things, because they are, from America at the turn of the last century and are now in a fairyland where nobody has money because everybody is so very, very agreeable that they will all do things for each other without needing to be paid. It's the kind of utopian vision that only functions if everybody there is really, really nice. The kind of the kind of communistic vision that Frank Baum is very clear to say, listen, this only works because everybody's super nice in Oz. We all know that's not how the real world works. Anyhow, so while things are going, so after a day or two, Dorothy and Em and Henry and the wizard and a few other people decide they're going to go on a little trip, a sightseeing trip around Oz. So they go to a few places, and it becomes yet another travelogue. This time it's not a travelogue with some sort of a mission to, we need to get to somewhere so that Dorothy can get home, or we need to get to the wizard so that Dorothy can get home, or we need to get to the surface of the earth because we don't want to live underground for the rest of our lives, or any of these other travelogues. In this case, it's a travelogue that is we're just looking at stuff. At the same time, the Gnome King from the third book, Ozma of Oz, has decided he wants revenge on Ozma for stealing his magic belt, and decides he's going to invade Oz, and one of his gnomes winds up getting himself promoted to general because General Guff is just smart and very, very determined. And half this book is his travelogue of wandering about collecting allies for the Gnome King. And it parallels Dorothy's trip in that you have this guy wandering around, and the interest of it is more all of these strange people and places that he goes to see, because the invasion, Ozma becomes aware of the invasion and doesn't really do anything about it. And news eventually reaches our wandering group of people through the Tin Woodsman, who says, I was going to get my Winkies together, we were going to defend Oz, but Ozma says she's not going to defend us, and, she's our queen, so we do what she says. And they head into the Emerald City, and Ozma says, no, there's nothing, I'm not going to do anything, I refuse to harm any living person, even in self-defense. And it turns out that they managed to win victory because there's a magic fountain that makes everybody forget everything and become as innocent as a child. And so they sort of trick everybody into in the invading army into drinking the water and becoming as innocent as children. Then they throw them away into the outside world, at which point Ozma declares that there's just too much concern because they can't. The thing is that you need to remember that the Wright brothers flew their plane at Kitty Hawk in, I believe, within a few years of 1910, that it was, I think, 1908 maybe, that they flew that plane at Kitty Hawk, or was it 1912? I don't remember. I'm terrible with dates. And there had been zeppelins for a very long time, and of course balloons had been around forever. Indeed, that was, after all, how the wizard had wound up in Oz in the first place. And with the awareness that it was that easy to cross the desert, and with the way progress was going, Ozma says, okay, we need to cut ourselves off from the outside world, because if we don't, we're going to wind up being invaded by all those civilized people from places like the United States, and they'll expect us to become civilized, and then we'll become like everybody else and stop being a fairy country. And so they cut themselves off from the world and declare, we're going to basically cast a spell that makes us invisible to everybody, makes nobody able to find us, and so nobody will ever come and invade us ever again, and we're just going to be isolated here in our little country. And it's a startling and a shocking move, not least of which because Ozma, the land of Oz, has allies in the land of Ev, just on the other side of the great desert that protects Oz from the rest of the world. That there were all of those people from other lands who came to Ozma's birthday party, all of those King Kikabray and the king of the foxes that had come from outside. There was Polychrome, the rainbow's daughter. All of these various people would never be able to find Oz again, and it's an isolationist move that is really rather shocking, considering how friendly Oz had been up until that point. But this was very much Baum's determination to make sure that he didn't have to write any more stories, and probably also to avoid dealing with any little children who suggested that somebody have, a war bomber come by and bomb Oz, because wouldn't that be exciting? Because, he got a letter or two from kids suggesting that. Anyway, so it's just, I have a great deal of affection for this story for, I'll be honest, the oddest of reasons, because this is an Oz book and I enjoy all of the strange people, including the defensive settlements of Oz, where they have basically sent the two groups of people who are, from the Oz perspective, the most troublesome. The Flutter Budgets, and that you had both the Flutter Budgets and who are they? The other group, the Rigmaroles, which are called the defensive settlements of Oz because of the notion that basically Ozma said, everybody who has a tendency to catastrophize, you go over there, and you catastrophize with each other, and you stop making everyone else freak out. And the Rigmaroles are the people who can't answer a straight question because they're so busy talking. It's a wonderful concept to say, listen, you guys, hypochondriacs, go stand over there and stop freaking everyone else out, and you people who can't stop talking and can't give a straight answer, go over there and you can not give straight answers to each other to your heart's content. Not bother the rest of us. It's just such a wonderful concept. Everything that happens in this book is just more Oz weirdness, and it's delightful and I love it. But I also have very fond memories of this book, and I don't even remember what it was I read in this book, that I got it out of the library and I laughed so hard that I remember tearing the page of the book, which, trust me, is not a thing that happens with me. I do not tear pages of books, certainly not just because I am laughing so hard, but I did. So, for the fact that this book clearly gave me that much joy, I will love it forever. Even if I can't remember what it was I found so funny when I was, 6 or 8 when I first read this. Anyway, that is everything that I'm going to say, and I will see you all next week.